Welcome back to Real Life Strugglers, everybody. Today I'm joined with my new friend JamTag, and together we're going to watch a video of Answers in Genesis News, where they're trying to kind of poo-pah the Big Bang and make fun of science, and that makes me mad, and it also makes JamTag mad. So let's go.
I'm a proponent of the Big Bang theory. I think a Big Bang just struck up the right note and the universe happened. All right, Nick, so right here at the beginning, we got three people on the screen, but they don't tell us who they are. Who are we looking at here?
All right, sure. So the guy on the far left would be Mr. Ken Ham. He's the founder of Answers in Genesis, which is one of the most well-known young Earth creationist apologetics group. I would argue, though, that he used to be a young Earth creationist apologist, and I could respect him for that, even though I think it's the wrong theory. But he pretty much has transitioned to convincing people that anything that's not young Earth creation is anti-biblical, anti-God, that it all comes from the devil wanting to destroy Christianity, and that I can't agree with. The person next to him, the lady next to him, is Dr. Georgia PURDOM. She's the Vice President of Educational Content. She has a PhD in molecular genetics from Ohio State. Her specialty is in cellular and molecular biology, which you will notice is not a specialty in cosmology or astronomy or astrophysics. And actually, going back to Ken Ham, his specialty is not cosmology. And then the last person is Bodhi Hodge. He is an engineer. He has a master's degree in mechanical engineering, which also has nothing to do with anything.
Okay, so if I can just recap that. A person who is not qualified to speak about this topic, a person who is not qualified to speak about this topic, and a person who is not qualified to speak about this topic.
That is correct, and I'm pretty sure we're going to see a lot of it as the video goes on.
Okay, so let's start it.
Might let scientists calculate the precise age of the universe. So basically our universe is expanding. Okay?
Wait a minute, I thought they already had the precise age, 4.5.
No. That's what you think.
Oh, they've had all sorts of precise
15
dates.
billion years, right? 15 billion.
Yeah, but they talk about the thing known as the HUBBLE constant.
All right, yeah, let's stop it there.
Why do they have the Steelers logo in the background? All right, I'm sorry.
They're from Kentucky. Just to point out, measurements are never precise because you can always make the way that you're measuring it, your unit of measurement, smaller. Think about a ruler that only had inch markings on it. How do you know where you switch from 1 inch to 2 inches? If it's in between the 1 inch and the 2 inch, you kind of have to guess, like, oh, it's about 1.5 inches, but I can't be sure. And so what they're doing is they're constantly examining the expansion rate and try to come up with something more precise. Is they're trying to take that inch down to, okay, we'll have 1 inch and then 1/2 inch and 1 inch, and then 1 inch and then 1/4 inch, and then 1/2 inch. You know, they're just trying to get the margin of error smaller. You always have some kind of margin of error. And also point out, they can't even get the amount of time right. 4.5-ish for the age of the Earth, and it's about 13.8 billion years for the age of the entire known the entire universe. It's not 15. It used to be 15. It used to be 20, and then, you know, they kind of got better at measuring. But yeah, if you're going to make fun of something, at least make fun of it correctly.
Yeah, to get a bachelor's in biology, you have to go through Stats 300, which means you have to go through Calculus 1 and 2 as well. Possibly Calculus 1, 2, and 3, because calculus can be offered as 3 4-credit courses or 4 3-credit courses. Depending on whether they were 3 or 4-credit courses, you'd either have to take Calc 1, 2, and 3 or Calc 1 and 2. There is a concept in Calculus 2 known as Philo's paradox. And Philo's paradox is actually a story from ancient Greece where a man took a sword and cut a rock in half. And he was tasked with cutting the rock in half until it disappeared and no longer existed. And he could never accomplish this, because if you cut it in half and cut it in half and cut it in half, you never get to zero. However, eventually you get so close to zero that the statistical difference between where you are and zero does not matter.
Yeah, and I've heard that too, is crossing half the distance of a room, you can never actually approach a person because you can still halfway get closer. That's
another example of Philo's paradox. It's literally a 200-level undergraduate concept. And these people have PhDs. Like,
Thank you, Dr. Stupid.
They said there's two ways of measuring the expansion rate, but the problem is the two ways while they're precise, they give different numbers.
So they're not as precise.
there's an article on BioLogos' website about this. I'm going to shoot Nick the link for it so you can put it in the description.
I'm not sure how precise they can be if they give.
Yeah, that's what I couldn't understand here. They're precise, but their answers don't match. That's
They're
what
not
it says.
accurate. We know that.
Yeah, they're precise, but their answers don't match. So if only they can have this third method.
You know, the thing that they're talking about, and it's been called the crisis in cosmology, because we have to clickbait everything. But they have different ways of measuring the expansion rate of the universe, and they all give different results, but typically the margin of error. So let's say you measure it to 13.84 plus or minus 500,000 years. All of those margins of error tended to overlap each other. But as they're getting more precise in the measurements and lowering that margin of error, now we're getting to where the top of one and the bottom of the other, they're not quite touching each other anymore. And so they're basically saying like, all right, we got to figure out which one of these is the most accurate way to measure it. And then that's probably going to be how old the Earth is in the universe. But on the other hand, I can say, who really cares? Like, is there really a difference between 13.84 and 13.76 billion years?
But there's no reply at all.
You're still talking about 13 billion years. And it's more accurate of a measurement than saying the Earth and the entire universe are 6,000 years old and they popped out of nowhere, completely fully formed, even though if that was the case, when scientists looked at the Earth, it would look like it came out of nowhere and never changed, which is what people used to believe, the steady state model, and then we figured out that's wrong.
Thank you, Dr. Stupid.
In my Dennis Lemereau interview, he actually draws the analogy. He's like, so, when your mom got pregnant, at what point in the pregnancy did God come down and attach your left arm? Oh, you mean you were created via natural processes? Was your mom created via natural processes? What about her mom? Oh, hey, have you ever seen any animal that wasn't created via natural processes? So what makes you think that there are animals that weren't created via natural processes? And I like it. I think it's really cool because it takes their argument about have you ever seen an ape give birth to a human? And it just turns the argument back on them. It's the same exact argument. It's just turned back on them.
It's the hard knock life for us.
Make sure to also say you think we came from a rock or a banana.
Well, actually, when somebody says, science wants you to believe that people came from this and they hold up a rock, I'm like, so does the Bible. What's your point? And then they want to argue with me, and I'm like, is it fair to say that that rock is made out of dust? Yeah. What was Adam made out of?
And the third method is something about something colliding with something or other.
A black hole with a binary black only, no, a black hole with a neutron star. That's what.
Let's pretend that you're in a master's level science class and your professor does that. What's your reaction?
I would not be impressed with my professor. I mean, I know everybody has a bad day, but it's not like they don't. I'm pretty sure maybe they don't do a run through and practice before they film. Yeah, if you're trying to portray yourself like you understand something and you're reading a piece of paper, perhaps you should try to do a better job than she did.
I would agree with everything you said, and I'm pretty sure that an editor should probably be fired. Because, like, if you did that in this video, the audience wouldn't see it. I would clean that stuff up, you know?
Yeah, and I don't know if maybe they do this live. I don't know if they live stream this on YouTube or if this is pre-recorded and somebody has actually gone through and edited it. But
this is a clip.
Ask him to fix that stuff before you publish it. Hey, can we record that part where I couldn't say anything correctly? I look like an idiot, and I have a doctorate degree.
You know, that part where I couldn't remember what kind of stars need to hit each other, and instead of just rolling it back and saying two stars need to collide, I insisted on being specific.
But it is. They have to collide.
They have to collide, and then we can calculate the precise age of the universe.
Well,
they hope to.
Well, we can get the Hubble constant. See, you think the Hubble constant is constant.
You first. I know you got something to say about that.
Yep. So the Hubble constant is measuring the expansion rate of the universe, but it's not a constant expansion.
Let me interject. It is a constant rate of expansion. Here's how this works. It is literally the same exact mathematical formula for the example I'm about to give you. If you don't trust me, buy any collegiate level Calc 1 book and read it. I had to, and I'm not saving you the pain, okay? If I get in my car and I'm on a level surface, and I depress the accelerator and hold it perfectly steady at any point in its depression, I will force the car to engage in a constant rate of acceleration. However, in that constant rate of acceleration, I will go from 40 to 60 much more quickly than I will go from 1 to 20. Because if I am at 1 mile per hour and I double it, I'm going to get to 2 miles an hour. When I double that, I'm going to get to 4. When I double that, I'm going to get to 8. And the rate of acceleration is the length of time it takes the speed to increase by a set amount. In my example, it's the length of time it takes it to double. And it always takes it the same length of time to double. The actual difference in the two speeds gets farther and farther apart. The amount of time, the rate of acceleration is constant, and the Hubble constant measures a rate of acceleration of the universe.
Thank you, Dr. Stupid.
The more it expands, the faster it's expanding. So it's not like every day it's 2 meters wider.
Right. You gave an example to me privately before the stream about a balloon.
So yeah, it's like drawing dots on a balloon. If you blow up the balloon, they start to get farther away, but the bigger the balloon gets, the faster that they're getting farther away from each other.
Okay, now let's listen to what they have to say about the Hubble constant.
But they don't know for sure exactly what it is.
But they're saying the Hubble constant is not...
They've assumed it's been constant.
They don't know.
And they've assumed they've known what it was, but, based on some of these factors, they're not entirely sure.
Yeah.
So, it just goes to show that, hey, even in the fields of astronomy and things like that, there's still some stuff that people question. Now, even if they had the...
You want to talk first, or you want me to go?
You can go ahead.
They're scientists. They question everything. Scientists literally have one job. Question everything. They have to question so much stuff that they split them up into little tiny groups. They're like, okay, you question this, and you question this, and you question this. That's what they do. They come up with a question, they look at the evidence, and they come up with a likely answer to their question.
Settle down, Beavis.
The reason these people feel comfortable misrepresenting science in this way, like, oh, there's some things that they still question, is because they know that their audience isn't educated enough to understand that that's all scientists really ever do is question things. They're literally using propaganda to take advantage of the uneducated masses. It's disgusting, and it is not the way a Christian should behave.
You go to hell! You go to hell and you die!
I totally agree. And you think about science, of course science should question stuff, and science is basically saying, I have an idea, let's see if it's false. And if it's not able to really be proven false, then it's kind of generally accepted as being the true thing. But on the other hand, the other things they were saying, I always find it funny that uniformitarianism, or the belief that if X is happening this way now, it probably happened this way in the past, that's always a bad thing to them. They tend to think catastrophically, like Noah's flood destroyed everything, and that's how we can explain all of this stuff. But when they want to prove that the Earth is young, they always turn to uniformitarianism. Oh, well, the moon is getting farther away from Earth. And if we go back, 1 million years or 20 million years, then the moon would be sitting on top of the Earth and all life would be destroyed. So it can't. And it's like, well, actually, at one point, the moon was created. The moon got created somehow, whether God went moon or something exploded and made the moon. The moon was created at one point, and it wasn't sitting on Earth. It started expanding farther away from there,
I could be mistaken about this because I didn't look it up, but hey, you know what? If I'm going to be on the internet, I got to be wrong sometimes. If I'm not mistaken, they think that the moon actually did start by being part of the Earth. They think there was a meteor collision.
Well, actually even bigger. The current theory is that a planet maybe about the size of Mars smashed into Earth when it was still kind of hot and molten-y. That all kind of exploded into stuff which condensed down into a planet because of gravity. That's my understanding of what the current thing is. But also I want to point out, even in the Bible, there's things that people are not certain of. Like, who were the Nephilim? Were they two people that got together and somehow made really strong warriors? Was it angels that left heaven and mated with human women? Was it something else, some kind of semi-divine, Greek goddess-looking thing? And so if we can accept that there's parts of the Bible that we don't understand and probably will never understand until we go talk to God and ask him, why can't science be the same way? You don't have to. I don't know everything there is to know about the Big Bang. I know enough to defend it. I know enough to talk about it and educate people who know nothing about it. But just because I can't explain every single part of the Big Bang doesn't mean I can't accept it as being generally true.
Oh, you're just talking crazy now.
I know, I like to do that.
The Hubble constant. The problem is they're thinking in terms of uniformitarianism,
Right.
where they're assuming the rates and things have not changed all the way back in the past. So they're basically looking at this, trying to extrapolate back into the past to get an age of the universe.
Hey, I've got an idea. It's easier than that.
Tell me.
We can take a book called the Bible.
What good is it to have a rate that's measurable if it's not always measurable? My personal belief is God's the author and creator of everything. So he created physical laws which operate in a certain way. They've operated in a certain way since they were created. The heavens declare the glory of the Lord. People can look at the way things work and figure out how things happened and hopefully figure out, wow, that doesn't really seem like it just randomly occurred last Tuesday. Perhaps there's somebody behind it and they can find their way to God by studying science. That's how a lot of people got to become, Christians and believers in God. And also, Answers in Genesis extrapolates so that they can prove the earth and the universe is young. They do the same thing that they accuse everyone else of doing. They do it wrongly, but they extrapolate to try to prove the universe and the earth is young. If they do it, it's okay. If they extrapolate, it's okay. If science that doesn't agree with the young earth creation, if they extrapolate, all of a sudden it's a bad thing.
Right, you're bloody well right.
Yeah, it's hypocrisy to the core. It's all propaganda. I minored in English in college, so I had to learn a lot about a lot of different genres, and I can pretty much spot a genre within a page or two of any work. And everything I've seen from these people is clearly propaganda. They're trying to present educational information in a persuasive way. That's like the definition of propaganda. You can't do that. That's propaganda.
Settle down, Beavis.
But I digress.
But he does have a cool Australian accent.
Oh yeah, he does. It makes everything more believable when it's said with an Australian accent. Hey, if there's anybody in the audience who can do a really good Mick Dundee impersonation, I want to have you on my channel, and I want to overdub your Mick Dundee impersonation like it's what Ken Ham is saying. In any video, you pick the video, and you're going to read Ken Ham's lines as Mick Dundee.
Mm-hmm. And you start in Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And it tells us what happened on each of the 6 days. On day 6, he made the first man, Adam.
Yep.
And when Adam was 130 years old, he had a son called Seth. Mm-hmm. And then you can read on about when Seth had a son. Mm-hmm. And you can add up all the dates, and you can get eventually to the flood. Mm-hmm. And then from the flood to Abraham, and then Abraham to Christ, and then through to today, and it comes to about 6,000 years.
Okay, so here's the English geek in me popping up again. I'm going to just re-explain what he said, but the way I see it. This is what I heard him say just now. You can take an ancient Near East text, read it in the same exact way you would read a 21st century book, and this will give you the truth about why all the science is wrong. Never mind that if radiometric dating is wrong, then the entire global energy industry would collapse because it is an integral part of how they find their energy sources. And we're using a boatload of electricity to make this production.
Thank you, Dr. Stupid.
Yep.
Was I as convincing as him when I said it in that phony, over-articulated way? Did that make it more convincing?
I now believe everything you say. Yes. Try it in an Australian accent, and maybe you'll really do it.
I can't do Australian. I could do Southern U.S. I mean, that would kind of make me fit in. They are in Kentucky, but
yeah, there you go. My thoughts on a couple of things he said. Number one, the Bible never mentions when things happen. The only mention of time in Genesis is in the beginning.
That's not how any of this works.
So to me, it's just saying there was a beginning to things, which up until like 1950s, that's not what people believed. They believed in a steady state universe, and that it had just always been there. So God's saying in Genesis, hey guys, I made everything. At the beginning, I was there. I was the one that did it. Number two.
Here, hold on a second there, because your point's not incorrect, but your fact is.
Okay, what's that?
It was actually in the late teens or early 20s when the Big Bang Theory was first postulated. It completely flew in the face of all the science, because all the science to that point was based on the steady state theory. And then dude comes along and goes, no, it started. There was a beginning. The Big Bang Theory actually creates a point of agreement between the Bible and science, and these idiots try to use it to say that they argue.
Yeah, I could be messing up dates and...
Oh, and like I said, your point stands. It was just that the fact was a little...
I'm on the internet. I might as well be wrong at least once. And the other thing I was just going to talk about, them trying to use the chronologies in the Bible to prove creation happened October 10th, 404 BC at 3 p.m. In ancient Near Eastern culture, which is where this story comes from, when it was written down, when it was told, that number one, the chronologies weren't complete. They would have a gap in them. They might use a different word to mean a different thing. And also begat even doesn't mean the same thing in Hebrew as it means in English. If you said somebody had a kid, it doesn't necessarily mean directly like I got a girl pregnant and she had a kid. It could mean I was the one that was responsible for starting a line in my family that eventually became this person. So there could be thousands or hundreds of thousands of years gaps in there. And to think that they're a historical document is, just like you said, reading something in a modern viewpoint in English. The King James English translation was not the first Bible ever compiled and written. It's been around for a long time. A lot of different people thought a lot differently than the way people think now.
Yeah. Now think about this. We have a book from God who knows all things, created all things, has always been there and cannot lie. Why would we possibly throw that out the window and trust man-made ideas about the past where we weren't there, we didn't see it, we make mistakes all the time, and just make assumptions about the past?
I think the reason for that is because the Bible says it was inspired by God and written by men. So we're taking something that was actually written by fallible, deceitful, sinful men and comparing it to theories that were come up with by fallible, deceitful, sinful men. But at least those theories have evidence behind them, which the Bible does not have. So we're going to read the Bible non-literally instead of literally, because we, unlike you, have two brain cells to rub together so that we can come up with a thought.
One of these things is not like the others.
So, yeah, the Bible is a theology book. It's not a science book. It was not intended to teach people science. It was intended to say, hey, I'm God, I made everything, and I've been here since forever. Reading the Bible in a certain way is a man-made idea. So they're just as guilty of man-made things as they're accusing scientists of being.
They'll catch it and they'll be able to measure it. Yeah, that's really good.
And then in the future, they'll try to come up with a better method to arrive at it.
So what are your closing thoughts on that?
Just what they said at the end, that's exactly how science works. We're always looking for a better method to do stuff. I once heard it described as, think about somebody making a painting. They start out with this big broad brush and you just slap a bunch of paint on the canvas. You get a background, you get some undertones. Then you get a smaller paintbrush and you kind of block in like, okay, here's the face, here's the body. And then finally you come in with the fine brush and you get the pores of the skin and the hair and stuff. And that's what science is. We started out with people just going, ooh, ugly stars. They must be hanging in sky. Then we invented a telescope and we're like, oh yeah, they're kind of far away. Then we invented radio detectors and the James Webb Space Telescope and these electron microscopes that can get fine details, and we're like, oh, okay, well, this is why science changed from believing this to this, because we can observe stuff better. We got better detail, better tools. And the way they just kind of throw everything out is like, oh, it doesn't say what we think the Bible says, so it must not be true, blah, 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 they're evil atheists. Makes me mad.
You go to hell! You go to hell and you die!
It makes me mad too, especially when all of the evidence that we have, all of the archaeological evidence that we have from human civilization is one of two things. It's either telling a story or it's very obviously record keeping, like a tally sheet or something like that. But anything that's just written text is a story. And like the oldest cave paintings we have in France are telling a story of a hunt. At our heart, at our core, we're storytellers. We tell stories. Genesis 1 through 11 tells a story. It makes points. It's not a historically accurate rendering of what happened. The entire concept of historically accurate renderings of the details didn't even exist until the Enlightenment in the 1700s.
That's not how any of this works.
For crying out loud. That's all I have to say about that video and that topic.
Thank you, JamTag, for joining me. It was a lot of fun. I think we each kind of have a different side. You tend to go academically, and I tend to go scientifically. Yeah, the collaboration is good, and I hope we can do some in the future. You know, if you're not a regular viewer of my channel, really, I just try to talk about things people struggle with, and I think balancing science with the Bible is something that people on both sides, young earth creationists and atheists, they can't quite get the two to mesh, and a lot of times people just leave the faith because of it, and I don't want that to happen. I want people to stay in the faith.
And I'm kind of doing the same thing on my channel. I just come at it from a completely different angle. And that's why these collaborations seem to be working out so well. There is another one of these over on my channel. It's linked in the description below. Thanks for having me, Nick.
Thank you for joining.